welcome to Elvenhome, and to this edition in which I keep faith with the promise that I made actually I think 2 editions ago to show you the process of building one of the little bungalows and then painting and weathering it, which are going to form the dwellings up at High Elven. An update on the engine shed, though not a very long one, and a chance to see it a bit more closely at hand, the 2 locomotives that are still running around on my layout behind me. So let's get on first of all with the work on the Kestrel bungalow kit. A couple of videos ago I said that I would build one of the bungalows, the 2 bungalow kits that I got, which I'm intending to use for the dwellings up at High Elven. And here you can see the one that I completed. Just having seen it now, that seems to have lost some of its paint somehow. So that will get a touch up. And show you how I got it from being this basic kit into that state. Now this will be a voyage of discovery for us both, because for the life of me I cannot remember which grey paint I used for the walls. I think I know which one it is, but it could be a different one, because there are at least 2 shades of grey involved in that building. The kit, as you can see, is very straightforward. It's very basic. I think some of the parts are fairly generic in that they're obviously used in a number of kits. The gutters and downpipes, for example, are much too big for this kit and need to be cut down when we get to that stage. The numbers of windows you're given are too many, because I have left over from the other kit these already. So I don't think I'm going to need this at all, because those are already painted up, though they need a second coat. They were only given 1 coat of paint. And I will only need some of these windows, but they'll all be painted up in due course. The windows go in right at the end. Everything else is done before we get to that point. So what I'm going to do is build the basic structure, that's the 4 walls, and put the roof on, because then all the painting and everything else is done once they're all in place. Sorry, I'll get the 4 walls on, then we paint that, then I put the roof on and paint that, and the chimney, which is in 2 sections. I'm not going to video myself doing that, because it really is a case of just using a bit of contactor glue and sticking it together. It shouldn't take very long. I'm using the Revel contactor glue, which is in this bottle, because it normally comes in a rather oddly shaped blue thing with a very long nozzle for delivering the glue, which kept gluing up, and I'd cleaned it out enough times, and enough was enough, so it went into one of these little Metcalf bottles. Okay, I'll come back once I've got the basic structure glued together, and we can start talking about how I go about painting it. Okay, well, we're about an hour after the last section. The first thing obviously was to stick the 4 sides together and leave that a while so it was fully dry. And then what I've done is put the first coats of paint on everything. So this has blue grey pale, the Vallejo colour, in case you want to get that colour. And that's just gone on, so I want that to dry nicely before I do anything more. It won't take very long because it's not a very thick coat. Probably another half an hour and it'll be really dry. The roof has been painted in the ever-present London grey. This is a really useful grey colour I've found. The insides have been painted just where they'll be visible, so I don't have to do that once that's stuck on. That can be put to one side now, because putting the roof on is about one of the last things that we do. So move that out the way. The chimney stack has similarly been painted. Again, we won't need that till the end, so we can move that out the way. I've now painted up all the windows. Let's get this in focus. Thank you. The key thing is obviously to get the center parts of the windows properly coated. The outer edge you won't see, because these obviously slot into place. You want them green, but they don't need to be as painted as completely as the inner parts. So that's out the way and done. Those have been retouched, because those are the ones that I had done already. I haven't painted these. I forgot to do these. I need to paint these up black, which I will do again towards the end, because painting them black takes the shiny blackness off it. See what I mean? I paint them with a flat black, because otherwise if you put them on just like that, they'll, light will reflect off them and they'll look odd. So the next thing I'm going to do is to start stippling over the top of this basic coat. I think I will use the London Grey, and I will use a stippling brush that I bought from Petite Models. If I just show you the brush, let me just get it. This is the brush I'm going to use. One of the things that I have discovered, and those more experienced will know this already, when you first put the paint on, the tendency is for a big blob to form in the centre. So it's worth a few dabs on some paper before you apply it to the model. Otherwise, you, particularly with a brush this size and a model that size, you will find that you have a complete wall painted in uniform colour. What I will do, I'll just reset everything up, and I will video myself just starting to apply the stipple effect. The first colour that's going to go on is the London Grey, and I'll see how I do with that. Probably then I may need to put the blue grey back on again, and it's a case of layering those two stippling effects until you get an outcome you sort of like. This model, I am pretty sure, has white as well. I'm sure that's an off-white and not the pale grey, but I may be wrong, and we'll see once we start doing things. So I'll just reorder things a little to put the camera to one side, and I'll start working painting up the sides of the building. I've given this a little bit of time to dry since you last saw it, just to give you an idea of the effect that stippling has given. The next thing you'll see me do is I think, a white stippling. I may thin the white paint down a little bit, and then I will do a very light stippling with the pale grey again, and we'll see what effect that gives us. But as I said, it's a case of just doing layers until you get the effect that you think, yeah, that's fine, that'll do me. And I'm not trying to absolutely replicate the other house, because they're all going to weather in a different way, and it's really just a case of trying to get them looking similar but not entirely the same. Right, well, I think that's probably about right, which I had to remind myself, because I was thinking, it's a bit lighter than the other one, but this one has also had weathering powder put over the top of everything. But in broad terms, that's similar enough. The next thing I'm going to do is try and remember how I mix this colour up for the brick detail. If I bring it in, you can see the brick detail below the course. The doors are painted right at the end, so don't worry that you can't see the doors at the moment, which I will do once I put the windows in. And then we will go over with a mixture of smoke and dark earth that will blend all this stuff together once it's finished, and that's after I've put the roof on. So off camera, I will mix up and try and remember what colour it was that I created to do the brick border. It's supposed to look really rather dingy, and I think I can remember which two colours they are, but we'll find out, and I'll tell you when I come back. So I'm going to paint this border in there. I will stick the roof on, stick the 2 pieces of the chimney breast and put that in place. And then I will paint up the downpipes, because I still haven't done these in a flat black to get rid of the shininess off of them. Those are fitted on, if I show you on this model, they're very straightforward. They really do just stick on the side, and then you cut the pipe to size, and you'll see just how much longer these are. So these are plainly a kind of generic downpipes and gutter set that go with a number of their buildings. And then I'll stick those in place. That needs a bit more glue on that one. And that will then give me, the last thing to do then is to put in the windows. And then I'll show you how I do the weathering, how I do my weathering, not how to do weathering, because I'm no great specialist at it. So let me get the brick course painted on this one, get the roof and bits stuck on, and then we'll start having a go with the weathering powders. Well, here we are a little bit later on in the same day. This is the one that I've been working on. That's the one I was trying to largely replicate. This is a little bit darker, I think, overall, but also I haven't yet done any weathering. I couldn't for the life of me remember what colour I'd I'd used to get the brick effect there. But instead, I've since had some new paints arrive, so I had a little look what I had through there. And I used a mixture of Cavalry Brown, which is quite a nice bricky looking colour. This is from a set that you can get, which is equestrian colours. So you have a nice range of tones that you would have for horses, presumably, and Saddle Brown. And those two together gave me this red, or brick effect, which I'm quite pleased with, quite happy with. I've put the windows in, because they need to be weathered at the same time. When I finished painting, I painted the inner parts of the window frames white, so there's a little bit of white showing around them. I've also inside, in case I do decide to light these buildings, this is the Vallejo plastic putty. So I put a strip in there to make sure that there is a seal and there's no light bleed that will come up from the top of the roof. And obviously the gutters and downpipes have been put on. So the only thing left to do now is to do the weathering. And for that, I am going to use 2 Humbrol powders, which is this one, which is, if I get it the right way up, Smoke, and this one, which is Dark Earth. I'm going to do the smoke first, brushing downwards, because assuming the smoke falls down, brushing downwards across the roof, and then across most of the building. And the Dark Earth is more likely to be around this area of the property than anywhere else. This is something I am still learning how to do, dry brushing. Sometimes I get it right, sometimes I get a big blob. But we'll see what happens with this one. Just drop a little bit out. That's a bit off camera. Hold on. So we'll just drop a little bit into there. We won't need much. It's not a very big building. This stuff goes everywhere. It's already gone there. And don't rub it, which I have just done off camera. So I now have a handful of smoke. Right, that's better. Right, okay, here we go. So just dip me into there, get it on the end, get the excess off on that, pick this up, and then we'll do the roof first, I think. Would help if I could see. Can't actually see any coming on there. I bet you. That's better. It's just taking the a bit of the shine even off the paint that was put on there. Yeah. And if you can see now the smoke effect. There's just where, in a fairly random way, which is what we're after. Now we'll set to work on the walls. I don't know whether you can see there. To my eye, it does. I can see the difference. Whether it's coming across on the video, I'm not sure. Just a quick tab. Well, this is the last of the walls to be done in smoke. Running out of smoke. That's it. So the last thing to do now again, I won't need much of this. Now this is not for the roof, but it is for the brickwork particularly. And you can see how it darkens it down, because I think that has actually. That has, I can see that that's taken that red and just taken the edge off the redness of it, and that the house has darkened down, and that now actually the two of them are really not very far apart. As I said, I don't want them to be, they couldn't ever be identical. Powder all over my hands. As I said, they couldn't ever always be identical because of the technique for the painting, but they will quite happily sit on the layout. And I've ordered another 3 So there'll be 5 eventually. I chose 5 actually. I was originally going to have 6, but I remembered something from a master chef that I once watched of a top chef saying how odd numbers of things like vegetables on the plate always appealed to the eye more than even numbers of things. So we'll see if that's true in railway modelling too, and we'll have 5 houses sitting up there rather than a more orderly 6. That's if my my obsessive behaviour disorder can cope. So that's been quite good fun today, actually, doing a bit of modelling that didn't involve cutting up lots of bits of strip styrene. And we've now got 2 of the properties that will go up at High Elven. Just a quick update in this video on the building of the engine shed. I have now completed the work to build all 14 of the window panels. Doing the remaining 6 or 7 over the last couple of weeks, it's quite painstaking. I thought the jig would help me a lot. It did, because they're all the same. It takes quite a bit of time, as you will have seen from the last video, to make each panel. Having completed this, I started thinking a bit about what was going to go on the reverse of this panel. And in the process of doing so, I started to look at this, which is the proper 2mm gauge brick card that Slaters do. The one that's on here is the 4mm gauge. When I mentioned this, I can't remember if it was the last video or the one before, a number of people, including Chris at Bognor Regis, said maybe I would have gone with the 2mm brick. And I also mentioned last time that I had this gap down here which I was going to fill in some way. And I made the mistake of thinking, well, I wonder what it would look like if I did use the 2mm brick here. And so I have done just that. And also I've cut it out, which makes it more difficult again. But I have to say, let's just stand these up a little and get the reflection off them. I think the 2mm brick looks much better. And I think it looks much better enclosing the whole of the window frame. But I'd be interested in your views. I think I know what I'm going to do, even though it means recutting all the plastic. But I do just think the 2mm just looks better. I am going to paint this a slightly darker brick colour, because this is a bit too orangey and a bit too light, and I want it to be a bit darker. Using the smaller bricks, I think painting individual bricks to get an effect might be going overboard, but I think a combination of a dark brick colour and then a white wash over the top to give me something like a brick course will probably be fine. The internal walls are still going to be 2mm, but not the red brick. I've bought this, that'll send your eyes funny. I've bought this trip to Harben Hobbies, first trip in, 9 months I think. And I couldn't find a white card, which is what I was actually after. But I think this painted white will give me the kind of off-white look that I was actually going to aim for. Because inevitably this grey or brown is going to come through the white paint, but actually the combination of the two may give me the colour that I was looking for. So I will start early next week cutting the frames for all the windows, both internal and external, and hope to have the first wall put together by about the end of next week. So in the next video there will be a bit more on the engine shed, because with a bit of luck we'll have some walls on which we can start thinking about how we're going to enclose one end, what the entrance is going to look like, and how we're going to support the roof canopies. So that's just a quick update on where we are with building the engine shed. I thought I would end this edition of Elvenhome just having another brief look at the work that I've been doing, fiddling around with CVs for the first time. In the last video I think I said I was adjusting the CV values on the Pullman, when in fact I was adjusting the CV values on the Duchess. Though Mark Island very kindly got in touch after the last video and has given me some really useful information about CV settings with the Zimo decoders that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to be doing a bit more testing, and while I'm doing that, I won't put any more locomotives on the track, because I will use the main track for programming. Those of you who have the Gagemaster Prodigy, either Express or the Advance, will know that the programming track for the Prodigy is only for programming. You can't run trains on there, so you can't, for example, put a rolling road on there and run your trains in. Which means that if you're programming on the programming track, you have to pick it up, put it on the main track to see if it will run. But you can program on the main track. So the Duchess has had some refinements made to her, and this is why I'm hoping we can work. I've got both trains running at a scale speed of about 74 to 75 miles an hour, from a very useful site actually, where you can use as a stopwatch to measure over a known distance, and it will then tell you what speed your trains are doing. And I'll put a link to that website in the description below, because it's really quite useful. What I'm going to do is, as the Duchess emerges from the tunnel before Weathertop, I will cut its speed to 0, and you'll see how it now decelerates better. I mean, it's actually going from 75 miles an hour to nothing in no distance at all. So I suspect all the passengers will be plastered at the far end of the carriage, but it looks quite good. So I need to keep my eye on things here, and we'll bring the speed down to 0 now. So the speed is now at 0, and you'll see the train decelerating and stopping in the platform. I was a little bit late doing that. It's actually overrun. So that's a report to the engine master, to the Office of Rail and Road, because it's gone through the signals at the end of the platform. If I show you the engine starting up again now, so I've now put it up to 65 on the Gagemaster controller, and you'll see the engine slowly moving away and gathering speed as it accelerates away from the station. Still more refinements. I think I need to think a bit more about the starting voltage, which I may have as a little bit too high. But it's quite good fun learning to drive this thing and get it to stop where you want it to, even if I didn't manage it that time around. We'll have another go as it comes out this time. Let's see if we can get it any better. Well, that's a bit better, but not much. Okay, that I think concludes everything for this edition of Elvenhome. If you've liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed, well, please do subscribe. It'd be great to have you along. And of course, if you've got any comments, well, please do let me have your comments. There we go. I had the Duchess still crawling along. Do let me have any comments, because they're incredibly helpful, but particularly on the issue of the brick that I should use for the wall on the side of the engine shed. But until I speak to you again in about a fortnight's time, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.